All right, nice to see you, Todd on here. As you can see from the setting, I'm going to do things a little differently today. One of the reasons is I just feel like it. One of the most fun parts of doing this kind of work this way is that you have freedom and flexibility to play with it a little bit. And especially when we're studying the book of Mark, which, as I've said a few times now, is going to take us 67 weeks right into May of 2015. I figure we have reason and cause to be flexible from time to time. So what I thought I would do today is I'm just using one of the whiteboards in my office. I spend most of my life as a writer-producer in television, sometimes music video, very once in a while in film. And so my office, you can't see it, but everywhere you look almost in here there are whiteboards. There's a big one here. Over to my left is another one in my office, which is just to my right. There's two more whiteboards. We're always writing stuff down, always brainstorming. This board has had a lot of content. When I started out in ministry, one of my favorite things to do was to teach our midweek, almost like a Bible study series, using a blackboard at the University of Toronto. And I found those to be really formative and productive times. So I thought I would do that today. So you can see that I've written our text down here on the board. And what I'm going to do is not really preach through it, but teach through it. So what we're going to do today is basically the process that I would go through when I would prepare this text for a sermon. So we're going to kind of walk it through. I've got some markers, and we'll be able to kind of break it down as we go. So basically this is kind of an intuitive Bible study done on the fly for your benefit. So if you have a Bible with you, I would suggest you open it to the book of Mark, the Gospel of Mark. That's our text. And today we're working on chapter 1, verses 35 to 45. So I'm just going to read it right off the blackboard, and feel free to read along with me. Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he, Jesus, went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is looking for you." But he said to them, "Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth." And he was preaching in their synagogues throughout all Galilee, and casting out demons. Now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him, and saying to him, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, "I am willing, be cleansed." As soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. What I've done here is I've broken it down into, 12 points. And I've done this just the way I would do it when I was studying for myself. So we're going to do the same thing together. Typically when I come to a text, the first thing I do is read it like we just did, and then I print it on a piece of paper. So I used to do all my work in my Bible. But as I've gotten older, obviously been preaching for a long time, I started to run out of space in the margins in my Bible, especially some of the more popular sections or some of the sections that I've preached through more than once. There's really almost no room left to write. So what I do now is I'll just grab the text off the internet and I'll print it in Word format, double space it, and then what I do is I sit down at my desk and I work it through. So as I work through the text, I'll literally just underline the point. So when I come to this right away now in the morning, something occurs to me that I wanted to point out to you. From Jesus' perspective, from the perspective of his disciples, this is a new day. Okay? Now this is one of those points that's kind of a simple point. You're like, yeah, big deal. It's a new day. But I just felt reminded to remind you and to remind myself that every new day is a new day. So make sure you treat it as such. It's very easy for us to just kind of get into the habit of doing life as usual, as normal. It's kind of a catch-22, right? Because the more organized, the more habit-oriented you tend to be, the more effective you tend to be at doing what God has called you to do. The more regimented your schedule, the more results you tend to get. Freewheeling, kind of relaxed people tend to not achieve as much as people who have a well-structured life. I'm not necessarily saying the one is good, the other is bad. I'm just saying that in my experience, and I think you'll agree with me anecdotally, the more organized you are, the more habit-oriented you are in terms of positive habits, the more of a difference you make in the world around you. But that said, it's very easy for us to just kind of fall into the habit of doing everything the way we have always done it. Today is a point, for example, I'm not preaching the way I usually preach. I'm doing it completely differently. I am mixing things up. Why? Because every new day is a new day. One thing you can ask yourself today, or if you're watching this late in the day, you can ask yourself tomorrow, where can I grow today? So to treat each day as an opportunity, as a chance for growth. We see this in the natural world, that living things, they just keep growing. They don't stop, right? A tree doesn't get to a point and say, I'm not going to grow anymore. Even if it's not really growing much in height anymore, if it's reached the height that it was designed to reach, it's still constantly renewing itself. The bark is growing, it's shedding old bark, it's growing new bark, new leaves are growing, leaves are dropping, leaves are replacing the ones that have fallen to the ground. Living things are continually growing. Where can I grow today? Where can I stretch today? Where can I achieve today? Where can I serve today? This is something that's very central to my life, is the quest for achievement. It sounds kind of funny to talk about it, but hopefully it'll be useful for you. One of the things I do with my kids is constantly urge them to achieve greatness, to look at something as simple as a math test and think to yourself, how can I achieve greatness with this math test? Yes, at the end of the day, it's just a math test, but how you prepare, how you work under pressure, how you respond to the mark you end up getting, these are all of the seeds that, as you plant them in your life over the long haul, can turn into something great. That's my wife texting me. I'll just put that on silent, and I'll get back to her in just a minute. Where can I grow today? Where can I serve today? How can I love today? How can I love my coworkers? How can I love my kids? How can I love my wife? For me, this is a big area of focus when it comes to my kids. I work very hard at practically loving them. An example last night was my wife is away right now. She's visiting her dad in South Carolina. And Sarah's with her, so I just have the 3 kids. And so I made some time before bedtime to just lie down with them and to let them snuggle with me. So I had my 14-year-old on my chest, my 10-year-old kind of on my stomach, and then my 7-year-old kind of on top of this side of my body. We just kind of lay there and we just talked about life, and we prayed for Mommy. We prayed the Lord's Prayer together. We talked about work. They've been asking me how work's going because they know that it's been a bit of a tough season. And yesterday actually was a really good day. We had a really good moment professionally, and so I shared that with them. And what's interesting is, and this is one of the reasons that I'm so insistent about being honest with your kids, as we've been kind of journeying through the past 10 months together, really struggling in a difficult season, I've been honest about that with my kids. And so they've been hearing me pray at dinner and throughout the day, asking for the Lord to help us. And so when I was able to report to them yesterday that the Lord had helped us, not in a final way that erases all our worries forever. I don't think that will ever happen. But in a tangible way, in a way that will make a practical difference to us over the next couple months. I was able to share that with them. And it was really wonderful to see my kids celebrate with me. Let's take a look here at the next section that hit me. So now in the morning, so this is verse 35. Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight. So this is the part right here that I liked, having risen a long while before daylight. This is almost a throwaway point, but this just reminded me of the near colloquialism, the early bird gets the worm. Your grandparents probably told you that one, the early bird gets the worm. Having risen a long while before daylight. I've heard this preached, I've heard this used as an example that, those who achieve greatness in life are those who get up early. I don't think that there's enough here in the text, particularly in this example, to say that's what, the meaning is meant to be for us. But I do know that as I've begun to get up earlier in my life, really just in the last maybe 3 years or so, Nikki and I have had to really intentionally move our schedule earlier in the day. And not because we had kids, we had lots of sleeplessness in the first 10 years of raising our children, but I mean just intentionally starting the day earlier, buying yourself some time. Just speaking, from a life experience perspective, that is the best thing about getting up early. The byproduct is I have to go to sleep very early. My friends laugh at me. I tend to be the first to bed of any of my friends, except on Friday nights. On the weekend, we throw caution to the wind, but during the week, I'm in bed 9 o'clock. I want to be asleep by 9:30 because we get up that early in the morning. It's just simply true about high achievers that they tend to sleep less than other people, or at the very least, even if they're going to bed early, they wake up before anyone else. But the point I wanted to make from this is around that colloquial phrase, the early bird gets the worm. You'd be amazed as you look at life how many Christian phrases or core teachings or ideas from the Bible have kind of seeped into popular culture. It's not really until you leave Western culture that you realize the profound impact the biblical worldview has had on the culture in which we as Westerners live. I just got back from a trip to the Third World, and it is just incredible to see the difference between a society that has not borne the strong imprint of evangelical Christianity versus the society in which I live, which has, for better or worse, mostly for better, borne the imprint of an evangelical view of who Jesus is and what that means for us. I mentioned this to my dad, who was just returning to England from some time in India and Bangladesh, and I said to him, you must just kiss the ground in London when you set foot back in the Christian West. And he said, you, my friend, are not kidding. These colloquial phrases are a reminder to us that Christianity has had a big impact on the Western world. And where this might hit home for you is just in reminding you that all is not lost when it comes to communicating the seemingly ridiculous story of Jesus to your non-Christian peers. Even if they claim to have grown up in a completely a-religious, non-religious context, they will have the deep truths of what Christianity is and what it means embedded in their hearts and minds, just as a byproduct, a result of growing up in the same culture in which you grew up. So I want to give you permission to take that simple reality, the early bird gets the worm, as proof that God is already at work in them, and that there's a very good chance that He is awakening them to faith, and there's a very good chance that He is doing that through you. So be encouraged. Now in the morning, having risen a long time before daylight, He went out and departed to a solitary place. This is almost a habit with Jesus, the whole idea of getting some alone time. He departed to a solitary place. This is a pattern. He's often in the Gospels getting alone to speak with the Father. I just wanted to ask you, as a result of this reminder, if you have any solitary space for godly reflection in your life. Maybe you ride the GO train into work every day if you live in the Greater Toronto area where I live and work. Maybe whatever metropolitan area you live in, there's some kind of public transit that you take into work. Do you use that time to reflect on God, to commune with God, to speak with God, to listen to God, or are you just, on your iPhone like everyone else? I know that this can be intimidating. I made the decision years ago not to worry about the weird looks when I pulled out my Bible and spent some time studying God's Word. It's a wonderful 40 minutes of no interruptions. You can turn your phone back on when you get to the office, but use that time, consider using that time to commune with God. Is there any solitary space for godly reflection in your life? Now in the morning, having risen a long time before daylight, He went out and departed to a solitary place, and there He prayed. I want to highlight that. He prayed. Okay? The point is a pretty simple one. If even God the Son made flesh needs to find time to pray, so do we. Right? God is praying, okay? Jesus is God the Son made flesh. He is praying to God the Father. He is spending time in prayer. If He needs to do it, we need to do it. This is a sensitive topic, when a preacher teacher gets talking with people about their devotional life, you tend to have some kind of a gut reaction. Who are you to tell me what to do? Don't nag me, I sound like your mother. Have you done your devotions today? I'm not trying to be that guy. I just want to say in my life, and I have said this throughout my pastoral career, which is now spanning 20 years, and I've said it, I've taught it, and I have experienced it for myself. When you ramp up your devotional life, you will see immediate dividends in your quality of life. I believe that it is a 1-to-1 ratio. Case in point, and I'm so stupid, like if I found that to be true, why don't I just do that all the time? I mean, I'm sinful, just like you, And these good habits are hard to cling to, and bad ones seem to be easier to get stuck on. I've just recently ramped my devotional life back up again, and as usual, I am seeing immediate results. If Jesus needed to pray, it's a very good chance that you need to pray. Let's continue. Verse 36, and Simon and those who were with him searched for him. When they found him, they said to him, here it is right here, everyone is looking for you. When they found him, they said to him, dude, everybody is looking for you. It could be here that the disciples think they're onto a good thing, like Jesus has been preaching and teaching, and he's been drawing a crowd everywhere he goes. He's been seeing incredible results. Like, why are you off on your own? Everyone's looking for you. It could just mean that everyone among them was looking for him. But if it was the former that was a factor here, I just want to point out that they think they've got a good thing going. They think they are starting to figure it out. They said to him, everyone is looking for you. But then look what happens. But he said to them, this is really crucial here. He said to them. They've got something in mind. They think they've got it cased, but he has something else in mind. They think they've got a good thing going. He's ready to move on to the next town. Just a friendly reminder, next time you think you've got it all figured out, just keep in mind that God might have something else in mind. It may be that you are ready to settle down. Later on in the Gospels, when Jesus is transfigured on the Mount of Transfiguration, his disciples are like, we need to build a shrine. And God knows the Christians that followed throughout the centuries of the Christian church were very quick to build shrines. We're like, this was awesome. We need to memorialize this. You may find yourself dealing with the tendency to want to just settle down. Like you reach a good spot in your walk with God and you're like, that's it. Let's stop. Let's plant our stick in the ground. We're staying here. God has got next on his mind. The question for you is, what's next for you? Do you have plans for your life, or are you just existing? Have you just stalled out? Here's what he's got on his mind. Let's take a look at verse 38. But he said to them, let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth. Okay, here's what I want to point out. He said, let us go into the next towns. This is where I get the idea of what's next for you. Have you just stalled out? Have you just become content with where you're at? Jesus is ready to move on to the next towns. And why is he ready to move on? This is really important. Let's move on to the next towns, that I may what? Preach there also. Because for this purpose I have come forth. Okay, so what is Jesus' purpose? Jesus' purpose is to preach. Okay, let's go to the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth. Jesus' purpose is to preach. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Preach means to proclaim, to announce. What was Jesus proclaiming and announcing? He was proclaiming the arrival of God's kingdom in himself, in bodily form, that the kingdom of God had drawn near in him, that he was God in a body, come to seek and save the lost. He came to preach, he came to proclaim, he came to announce. Now 2 Corinthians 5:20, famous verse, refers to us as his ambassadors. Now then, as ambassadors for Christ, we implore you on God's behalf, be reconciled to God. The scriptures are clear that we as Christians are his ambassadors. So if you're his ambassador, if you're his representative in a strange land, then you ought to do what Jesus did. And right here we are reminded what Jesus did. Jesus came to preach, to proclaim, to announce. So you need to live a life that proclaims and announces that the kingdom of God has come near in Christ. Okay, so just do an honest evaluation. I'm not looking to put guilt on you here, but there's a very good chance that you could be doing more to proclaim and to announce the kingdom of God by your conduct, and of course, when you're given opportunity, by the things that you say. Next point, we're on to point 7 here in verse 39. And he was preaching in their synagogues throughout Galilee and casting out demons. This is one of those transition sentences. I told you that one of the signatures of the Gospel of Mark is that he tends to jump around in terms of how he uses time. So I believe here verse 39 is one of those time ellipsing verses, and he was preaching in their synagogues throughout all Galilee. That's why I think so, right? Because he's saying, look, let's go to the next towns. And so then here it says he's preaching in their synagogues. I mean, could have been the synagogue he was in, but then it says throughout all Galilee. So he's obviously moved on. And now here's a very, 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 very important point. Casting out demons. So if you're a non-charismatic, this is going to give you cause to shudder. But just relax. The truth here is very simple. He goes into the other towns. Why? To preach, which is the reason he came forth. He's doing it throughout the entire region, and he is, as he's preaching, casting out demons. This is a chance for a commercial for the supernatural element. He's preaching and he's casting out demons. He's preaching and he's casting out demons. It could have said he was doing any number of things, healing people, ministering to the poor, setting the captives free, reaching out to the outcast, to the downtrodden and the oppressed. It doesn't say that. It says that he was preaching and casting out demons. I think it's just simply true in the West that we have replaced our emphasis on the supernatural element to the Christian experience with an unhealthy focus on being good. Right? It seems to me that a near obsession with morality. I want to be careful here. This tends to be a kind of inflammatory area of discussion. I think instead of focusing on the supernatural elements in our experience of Christianity, we have decided to focus rather on morality. We've decided to focus on being good. I was talking about this 15, 20 years ago when I first got into Christian ministry. I think one of the reasons that we remove the supernatural element from our Christian experience is because, quite simply, we can't control it, and therefore it makes us nervous. If you've ever been in a church context where the supernatural power of God is at work, you'll know that there's an element to it where you aren't really in control. Yes, I know the Scripture says that these things, when it comes to prophecy, for example, they ought to be done decently and in order. So I know that. I'm not saying that, mayhem is the order of the day. But I am saying that when you, as a pastor, when you as a Christian, are depending on God involving himself supernaturally with his people in the context of the corporate gathering, you are, by definition, leaning on something other. You are leaning on something other than just your ability to whip up a crowd, your ability to command a microphone, your ability, if you're a worship leader, to play a song in such a way that it makes an emotional connection with the audience. There's all kinds of studies about what's happening in the brain in the context of corporate worship, and those who don't love Jesus would tend to use that as an excuse to say, see, it's not really God, it's just brain chemicals, it's neuroscience. It's very easy to want to try and dismiss the supernatural from the Christian experience because we don't understand it. But in doing so, in kind of dismissing that side of the Christian experience and focusing instead on being good, we have redefined our faith in powerless terms, because anybody can try to be good. And as good as you are, anyone else can be as good as you are. The story of Jesus is very clear that none of it comes down to our goodness. The Bible is very clear that left to our own devices, we as human beings are pretty hopeless. We are sold as slaves to sin. That since Adam and Eve rebelled against God in the garden, in effect saying, I don't care what you say, I want to do what I want to do. Who are you to say I can't be equal with you? They bought the lie and they rebelled against God, and we've been paying the price ever since. And as a result, as their descendants, we have this sin nature. We have this inbred, inborn tendency to shake our fist at the heavens and to tell God that we would rather do things our way. We are rebels. We don't want to submit to God. And so none of us, as a result, no matter how hard we try, can end up being very good. We can be degrees of good, but I would say always with a small g. None of us can ever be capital G good. Only God is good. So if that's true, then no Christian can ever really be good. You can die to sin. You can be renewed in your faith. You can be conformed to the image and likeness of Christ. But the Bible is very clear that on this side of eternity, we are never going to achieve righteous perfection. If we could achieve righteous perfection, Jesus Christ would not have had to die. He would not have had to have his goodness applied to us and have had our badness be applied to him at the cross. That great exchange that is the miracle of Calvary, that is the miracle of Good Friday. It wouldn't be necessary if we could somehow work our way into ultimate goodness. If that was the case, then reincarnation would make sense. We just get a do-over and a do-over and a do-over. Just keep trying and trying and trying and trying until finally we get it right. Christianity says you can never get it right. Only God is right. And so therefore, if we are focusing on being good, we are focusing on a fool's errand. So let me just use this, that he was preaching and casting out demons, as an opportunity to encourage you to rediscover the supernatural element to your faith. Let's move on to point number 8, looking at verse 40. Now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him and saying to him, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." This is really, really great. It's my favorite section of the teaching. So first thing right here in green, now a leper came to him. Who is the leper? This guy obviously has leprosy. It's a skin disease that is all but non-existent in the Western world. Funny thing is, it still exists in the second world, especially in the third world. Leprosy was so contagious, of course, we forget that people living in that age of the world, they would never have had healthcare, anything like what we have. Even to this day, if you live outside of Western culture, healthcare is a big, big issue, and a simple skin disease like leprosy can become just catastrophic. And so in this age of the world, if you were a leper, you were an outcast. You were completely marginalized. The term leper colony was a true thing. If you had leprosy, you were forced to live outside of the city, outside of the town, outside of the camp. This leper, this guy's marginalized. You don't want to stretch it too far, but when you say leper, you can think outcast. You can think about the times in which we have been guilty of marginalizing people of other races. This ought to, unless you have your head buried in the sand, cause you to wrestle with how Christians are dealing with people of different sexual orientation and how we're going to kind of bridge that divide. It's a real battleground, right? It seems like you have the evangelical side and the gay rights side, and they're nowhere near any closer to any kind of agreement or consensus than they were 50 years ago. If anything, the fighting words are getting more and more intense. This can be people who deal with mental disability, people who are just born into a socioeconomic situation that doesn't give them the same kind of opportunity that you have. This can be old people. Do you ever feel awkward, like you're around somebody who's obviously struggling, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say? And so what you often do, if you're like me, you're kind of shy, so you just kind of ignore them. You treat them like a leper. This leper comes to Jesus. Keep the marginalized in mind. Remember to reach out to the least of these. Remember, that's a core value of the gospel of Jesus. This guy comes, and what is he doing? He is begging. He is imploring Jesus. Now a leper came imploring him. This caused me to reflect, caused me to ask myself the following question. When was the last time, Todd, that you were exposed to any kind of real need, let alone one that would cause you to beg? Now, this is a tough one, right? I mentioned it earlier in the sermon, or in the teaching. I just got back from the third world, and let me tell you, man, it opened my eyes. I have never seen anything like what I saw. We went into a little Haitian slum called Ponche Mateo, and within minutes, this little 2-year-old boy grabbed my hand, didn't let go the whole time we were there. Eventually, I ended up carrying him through this slum that is like the stuff you see on television. It's one thing to see it on television, I've now realized, and another thing altogether to actually experience it, to be there with the people. Utterly transformative. It'll change my life, it'll change my wife's life, the life of my kids, in terms of how we leverage what we do and the difference that we make. It's just crazy. But the hard truth is, I am not in a position where I need to beg Jesus for help. Yes, I've been in a tough position the last 10 months or so. And yes, if I look back over my life and career, I found myself in times of need. But very rarely, maybe 2 or 3 times in the kind of situation that would force me to beg Jesus for help. Now this gets tricky. I'm not suggesting that you do something irresponsible, stupid, or unrighteous in terms of, just putting yourself in a situation where you're in desperate need. I think it's clear that we're meant to what? To do justly, to do justice, to seek mercy, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. The goal is to do the right thing in any given situation. So I'm not saying be reckless, I'm not saying be stupid, I'm not saying just arbitrarily do something to put yourself in a place of need. Perhaps for us as members of Western society, the way to put yourself in need is to take more risks, is to dream a bigger dream, is to do more, to give more, to leverage yourself in the service of others to the point that you find yourself in need. I'm thinking of Rick Warren, I'll just be honest, who together with his wife Kay have practiced extravagant tithing throughout their life, giving more and more and more and more and more, I think to the point where they're up to 90% tithing. So they give away 90% of what they earn and live off 10%. It's reverse tithing. There are things we can all do to put ourselves in a situation where we need God to continue providing for us. So just think about that and see how that might translate into your life. Now, a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him, and saying, this is really key here. This guy is kneeling. You should have like a bing, 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 bing going off in your mind when you read that word. This guy is treating Jesus like a king. You don't kneel down to anyone other than to a king. This is kingly imagery here. This guy recognizes Jesus as king. What's it going to take for you to recognize Jesus as king? If you, like me, feel like God has been bringing you to your knees, maybe God has been bringing you to your knees. I would like to think that I'm smart enough to do the right thing, but the simple truth is I'm a son of Adam. I'm a son of Eve. Eden's shadow lies heavily on me still. And if I'm honest, I just don't do the right thing naturally. I am still selfishly motivated. It has taken a lot for God to, even just recently in my own life, bring me to my knees. Yes, moving forward, the goal is for us to learn from our mistakes and to submit to Jesus and to walk in newness of life, and thereby hopefully to avoid him having to bring the stick, so that we kneel naturally to him and we hail him as king and we do what he says. But you will go through times like I have been going through when Jesus forcibly brings you to your knees so that you will acknowledge him as king. I love this leper's theology. The leper comes to him and says to him right here, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Suffering sometimes is the best teacher. If you're willing, you can make me clean. Let me point out that second part there, that this guy already believes, right? If you're willing, you can make me clean. You can make me clean. Even in his affliction, he already believes. This is so different than me. It might be different than you. I find that I have a tendency to hold God hostage, to say to him, look, if you're good to me, then I'll believe. Maybe you felt the same way. If you're good to me, then I'll believe. We should learn from this leper. You can make me clean if you're willing. He already believes that God has what it takes to meet him at his point of need. It's just a matter of whether he wants to or not. Very, very humbling stuff. A good prayer for us to contemplate tomorrow, starting your day with, is this. What would you have me do, Lord? What would you have happen in this situation? What would you will to do? Then we get to point number 9, verse 41, which is my favorite. Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. This is a great, great verse. Then Jesus, moved with compassion. This is a dynamite window into the character and the nature of God, especially when God's people, you and me, act in a way that is less than compassionate, that is less than nice. It is very nice to know that the Bible teaches that God is moved with compassion. Put simply, maybe more provocatively, I think God is nicer than we think he is. I think God is kinder than we think he is. Then Jesus, moved with compassion. This is kind of a life verse for my dad. He taught me growing up that we're looking for this moment. We're looking, as Jesus' followers, to be moved with compassion. And when your heart is moved with compassion, that's when you ought to leap into action. My dad, as a good charismatic, would say that it's when you're moved with compassion that the power of God has a tendency to flow through you. He's experienced this miraculously in his life. I've experienced it in my life as well. Then Jesus moved with compassion. God is kinder than you think. What does he do? He stretched out his hand, and touched him, and said to him, this is beautiful, I am willing, be cleansed. I am willing, be cleansed. First, okay, I want to point out that Jesus stretches out his hand. Okay, we don't reach to God. God reaches to us. Jesus reaches out his hand. We don't reach to God. God reaches to us. Especially when we're speaking objectively about salvation. God is the author and finisher. He's the one who has made this happen. He is the one who has awoken you to his existence. Okay, he made the first move. God reaches to us. We don't reach to him. So he reaches, stretches out his hand, and he touches him. Okay, we serve a God who touches. We don't serve some distant, angry, impersonal, third-party being. We serve the God who reaches to us and who touches us, okay? It's meant to be personal. It's no mistake that it's physical. Remember, this guy had leprosy. He's contagious. You touch him, you get it yourself. Jesus doesn't let this man's disease keep him from touching him. God will not let your disease keep him from touching you, okay? You cannot be so unclean that Jesus won't touch you. He reaches out to him and he touches him, okay? We serve the God who touches. And he said to him, we serve the God who speaks. And this is a wonderful moment here because he speaks good things. What does he say? Glory and trumpets, in the words of Sam Gamgee. I am willing, be cleansed. For this leper, this is winning the lottery. You couldn't say anything better to this guy. I am willing, be cleansed. He reaches out to him, he touches him, he says, I am willing, be cleansed. We serve a good God. Continue to serve him, continue to love him. Do not give up the faith just yet. As soon as he had spoken, this is beautiful, immediately. It's like they want you to get it, right? It's like they say it twice. As soon and immediate. It's like bing, 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 bing. Take notice, okay? As soon as Jesus had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed, okay? Boom, it happens, okay? As soon as Jesus speaks, nature obeys. God gets results. You can trust him. He's in the business of being God. He knows what he's doing, and he will take care of you. Simply put, you can trust God to get the results he wants. So in the meantime, you just need to keep on trucking. If you want to find out the last three ideas I have, because this whole section today doesn't terminate with verse 42. I just wanted to teach through verse 42. It actually terminates with verse 45. So if you want to see what my three remaining thoughts are from verses 43, 44, and 45, just tune into toddganelon.com and I will fill you in on my blog. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for watching. God bless you.